Hello, this is Russell from
Tones of Evil.
and you're listening to Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks podcast.
This episode of Capes and Lunatics Sidekicks is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
This is DG Chichester, and you're listening to the Capes and Lunatics podcast.
Wow, I've never sounded better.
For some magic, yes. All right, everyone, welcome back to the Devil You Know, the Daredevil podcast. That's right. And we promised, and it's finally here. We got our friend, Mr. DG Chichester, back to talk Daredevil 317, 318. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
I'm just going to call you Dan because I'm going to stumble over that DG.
I would advise I would stumble over that. My wife nicknamed for me for a long time Deej, but that was, but then she gave up on that after a while. That was the easier way to do it.
Nice. All right, so again, we threw out if anyone had any questions for you. The one question I got, somebody texted the voicemail number, which is new for me. And I'm just like, we have these issues, and the one question we got is, what does the G stand for in DG Chichester?
Oh, wow, that was the best question. When I was really arrogant and young, it used to be God. I mean, I would go with that a lot, but and then it was guest, for a long time, just to keep screening with it. But it's George. It's my father's name was the same, so Daniel George Chichester, and then it just naturally went to me. So it became very pretentious when you just collapse the name and just go with the initial.
Another internet mystery solved.
Exactly. I'm just revealing my inner secrets to you guys,
Very important secrets. But so the reason we're here is to cover Daredevil 317 and 318, covered June and July 1993. And I think the most important question is...
Good God.
Yes. I mean, it's basically... Well, some big questions. One, why Greece? Why are these... It's like a collaboration of criminals just after Greece. Why the Greece?
Just the overarching question with these two issues is why, right? Why did you do this story? So this actually kind of goes back to, in some ways, the pitch that I won Daredevil with. Was talking about making Daredevil, making New York City a character in the book. And one of the things that allowed me to make New York City, I think, a character in the book to some degree was a newspaper that's no longer around, which was called New York Newsday. And so, of the many New York papers that there were at the time, and now it's down to maybe 2 or 3. There's now the Times, the High End, and the New York Post, the Daily News still around.
We don't talk about the Post.
We don't talk about the Post. The paper that shall not be named, and those are more tabloids. The New York Times, is it's whatever, high literacy, journalism. Newsday was somewhere in the middle. Newsday was kind of, booked themselves as like the everyday paper of New York. And they had different sections within the paper that actually hit upon every neighborhood in New York. So there was when you picked up the daily paper, there was certainly a lot that went to Manhattan, but there was the Queens section, there's the Brooklyn section, there's the Bronx section, there's the Staten Island section. And these really got in, and they had amazing writers, they had great writers, and very literate, interesting writers with a lot of personality and voice. And so they would pick up on these individual stories. And in fact, my biggest fear for writing Man Without Fear was when I moved out of the city at a certain point. And I was like, how am I going to keep up with these stories from New York Newsday, which are giving me so much inspiration? And I actually ended up finding a way to get them to deliver the paper to me outside the city, which probably cost me more than I was being paid to write the book. But I liked mainlining these stories. And one of these stories, because I would keep a clip file, I would read this and I'd read about this DA who busted this drug market, and that would become DA Kathy Malper, who later became sort of like a semi-regular character that I would do. But she was based upon an actual FBI RICO story, and in fact, at one point I got a call from the FBI saying, "What are you doing using our DA in this story?" And but one of these odd little side stories was back at Greece. Restaurant Greece was a commodity item on the criminal market, which was the most bizarre, strange thing to me, that of all the things you could steal and actually profit from, was that some restaurants were having their whatever grease bin out back ripped off. And I clipped this and I put a file and I percolated around and said, what can you do with a story like this? Is this going to become just a bit? And then as we were playing things out, it suddenly said, you know what, this becomes like an entire ridiculous story. And so that's where the grease angle itself came from. So it wasn't make-believe, but it was a very strange decision to make it into a full-blown 2-issue story.
Well, was it one of the other reasons you decided to do this story? Because, I mean, it was very entertaining. Again, it fit into with your style of writing, but also it was kind of, some of it was on the silly side.
Oh, absolutely.
Was part of the reason that was placed here is because it comes right before Fall from Grace. So you're like, okay, before we get really dark, let's do something a little more lighthearted.
Yes, definitely. I mean, it was of all the places it could possibly fit, and that even gets acknowledged, I think, on the cover, right? I think Pat wrote the, something. This is, folks, the last issue of Daredevil before, there you go, before 319, right? I think that was Pat Gary, who copped, to that. And certainly we knew where Fall from Grace was going to go completely. That was well plotted out and well tracked, from beginning to end, and all the things that were going to happen there. And this story would never have existed in this way afterwards, especially because of some of his relationships, or at least acknowledgments of some of the characters, besides the Taskmaster and Stiltman, those type of things. The Daredevil having to appear to be a new Daredevil afterwards, would not have tracked as well with those kind of little comparisons. But yeah, Phil, I mean, absolutely, if no one acknowledged that this is a silly story, and I think some people didn't. I mean, I think this has probably got some maybe most irate letters we ever got, or maybe I ever got, in the sense of, how dare you, no pun intended, have fun with Daredevil, how dare you laugh at the streets, or those kind of things. And but it's these kind of real things that happen, and it was so ridiculous, it felt like it could work. And I think for the most part it did. I mean, I've reread it before we got on over the last couple of days, just to make sure I knew what I was talking about. And there are some really silly but actually fun bits that I think work.
I mean,
and I had the original Pizza Rat, I think.
Oh, we'll get there eventually. But there are some good dark Daredevil stories, but I mean, that's the thing with Daredevil. He can go dark, but then he also has like a sense of humor. I mean, even in this two-parter, I mean, he probably could have taken these guys down a lot sooner, but he's like, let me run these guys through the maze, let them get to their goal, and then, then we'll just kind of take them down, even though, it's kind of, even he's just like,
right.
Look at this mess.
It's not an end of the world story, right? There's no dramatic turn of events that are going to undo all of New York City or all of America or all of the world if they got their hands on this stuff and walked away from it. I laugh reading it now too. Like, I guess $500,000 seemed like such an extraordinary amount of money at the time. Whereas now it's sort of like a rounding error on the stock market. But at that time, I guess it seemed, wow, they got their hands on $500,000. That would be a big deal. And so even if they had gotten it, and any one of them had profited from that, I don't think it would affect the criminal enterprise of New York, but it was fun to play with those guys and sort of and have them like compete off each other. And clearly, or maybe not so clearly, I don't know. It depends on your movie knowledge. I mean, it is very much an homage to the film. It's a mad world. So if you know that film at all, there are direct intentional parallels to play that out. So there's no way it's not intended as a comedy.
I mean, I miss these kind of stories because that's what we're always saying. It's like every story doesn't have to be the end of the world or even like, oh, the whole city's going to go down. I miss like, stopping bank robberies or just like heists, simple little heist things. Yeah.
I mean, I hope, we're going to do this monthly now, right? Which I'm very honored to do this with you guys. Thank you for that. And, so I don't want to go off on a detour and something we're going to talk about later, but one of my favorite issues is 34 Hours, which is just a story that is completely a series of incidents that are, just moments in time that Daredevil happens to be there. And I think that's in my mind, one of the best applications of Daredevil and it doesn't have to be about the end of the world. It could have been the end of the world for one of those people in the moment, right? There were some individual things that would have happened, but the city would have kept on. But that's the fun of it.
Lil, if you have any questions, I feel like I'm hogging.
No. Go ahead. I enjoyed the comedy aspect of it very much because he's in between his mental breakdown. So yes, let's be happy. Let's have something silly. It's just very. I think writers don't give readers, modern comics can never, in other words, that breathing room, the palate cleanser a lot, and like it's like the one shots are like just wrapping things up and then like setting it up. But no, this is like genuinely a palate cleanser because what comes next? Oh boy, and that's just so underappreciated in modern comics.
There's not a lot of light moments in Fall from Grace, I guess. I don't know how much is driven by. It's an interesting observation, but I don't know how much is driven, especially in the big publisher world, by editorial direction. Is it everything has to be at this level of it, and you never have these moments in between? I don't know. We had a lot of leeway. Right? We had a great editorial team, and they were very open to what about this and what about that, and in terms of steering Daredevil and the character, I felt like we as the creative team and we as the Daredevil office, for the most part, had a lot of opportunity to try that out, go play with that. So that's a gift you recognize now more after the fact than maybe in the moment of actually doing it.
I mean, yeah, this kind of story, I mean, there's certain characters you couldn't do this with, but like Daredevil or even a Spider-Man, I mean, that you should embrace. I mean, yeah, that you can do like different stories like this with certain characters. Street level, kind of have a sense of humor.
Deadpool.
Deadpool.
That's what, like reading it, I was just like, this could be a Deadpool story.
We ended a little differently, but sure, yeah, absolutely. And you can when you understand the character, and I think you appreciate the character, you can do almost anything with it. I mean, think about the Walt Simonson's turning Thor into a frog story. That there's nothing probably more bizarre in the history of a serious character, an epic galactic level hero, than turning him into a frog in Central Park. And there is, we can talk about that too, and I'm pretty sure, I mean, I wasn't close to Walt or the Thor office or whatever, but if I remember the chatter at the time, I think there was probably some editorial, not resistance to that, not in the Thor office itself, but maybe even higher up, of like, you're doing what to Thor? And yet it's one of the most bizarre, memorable stories with moments of adventure and real comedy. How else? You got a frog with a hammer.
Oh yeah, they still reference that to this day. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's just I like this story because it's like, it's a fun story, and you can even tell it's like, even like your main character's having fun, like, Daredevil's having fun with this, even like when Matt's yeah, just dancing around these guys. Even when he's talking to Ben Urich, he's like, okay, I gotta get going. He starts changing, and Ben's like, should I turn around? He's like, only if you want to not develop an inferiority complex.
Exactly. No, that's like good, or I love
Matt
the bit where he's...
It's Matt Murdock,
And he got the ease of start knowing what's going on. But I love the scene where he's behind the wall listening in on them where they're trying to rip apart Slick Jimmy's apartment, looking for the clues, and they're so dense and dull they're not finding it. And he just like bangs on the wall so the picture falls, and they get it. He's leading them on, and inevitably knowing that they're going to end up covered in grease, but he's also being heroic enough, air quotes for just people who are listening, that he's going to try to give them an out, and he keeps trying to give them an out. So just step away from this. This is not going to go well for you. Not in the usual sense of, you're going to end up behind bars or whatever, but you're going to end up covered in 20-year-old grease or whatever that would be. And yeah, exactly. It's not a tale for right before lunchtime.
Yeah, I mean, I think he even makes the comment at one point, the blind leading the blind, which,
Yeah.
Exactly.
No. My favorite panel for 317 is where he's just sitting at the desk. He's like, Grease, you can't make this stuff up. And I was like, is that meta? Was that meta?
It is, because it's like, that's it. That goes back to that clip file I was talking about, right? It's sort of like you clip the story, and it's like, is this a real story in the first place? And then you have it in your idea file, and you're saying, can you do something with it? And then you do something with it, and you say they're going to actually let me publish this. And even I think it's the opening to the second part where it's the big splash or semi splash, and he's surrounded by everybody, and he's kind of like, why is this happening to me? And it's which is again an acknowledgement that this is a character who's usually in the middle of some dark alley confrontation, and here's a moment where we can have some fun. I mean, there's always places you go back and you look at these things and you reread them and you say, I could have improved on that, or that would have been better if this was, or there was a lost joke, or there was a joke that didn't work, or that kind of thing. Comedy's hard. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be, a master of it, but there are, again, moments that work and moments that, a bunch of years later, I could have done it better. But overall, it's got some good chuckles, especially if you know the world and know some of these characters.
Did your artist go, what are you thinking, man? Or did he have fun? Did he loosen up and have fun with it as well?
I think Scott I think Scott had fun. I mean, I think the expressions, and we always talk about the stories. We had a lot of daily, every other day communication about things, on the phone back and forth, and I think the energy of things that he was doing and obviously he was going to shift his style radically, in just one issue, and come back with what he would continue to build on. But I think there's a lot of just vibrancy and lunacy and good times with the way that they look, the way the cars are careening around the corners, the way Stiltman's armor is continuously sort of malfunctioning and pulling him here or jerking him there, or his expression when roaches come charging from the inside. It's just a bunch of pure goof. So I think Scott was had it all. It looks like it to me.
I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a credit to Scott. Yeah, he didn't change up his style, and it's like even Stiltman looks, well, somewhat menacing until you see all those cockroaches in his armor. But yeah,
exactly. He's like, I've got this technology, and I'm towering over you all, and they're all just so full of themselves. That was the other, moment, for me, reminding myself, rereading it, and sort of seeing it. That was, when you've got these characters who think they own the world. I'm Taskmaster. I do this. I'm the Wild Boys acting like they're kings of the streets, and every one of them gets taken down by their own pride in so many ways, and their greed, which is as much playing with the character as again that homage to that film where so many characters just end up in comedy and tragedy because they let themselves get carried away by this enormous reward of money.
Speaking of villains, are you able? Sorry to cut you off, Phil. Are you able to just use whatever villain or just editorial comment?
Well, back in the day, Lilith, if you, and so I'm not sure what they do now, but back in the day, if you owned the villain or the character, in other words, like it was directly aligned with the title. It was a Daredevil villain, right? Or it was a character that ended up sort of operating within the Daredevil universe, like Ben Urich, right, or something like that. Then you never needed permission. You could do whatever you wanted. If you wanted to borrow a character, if I wanted to, when we used Spider-Man, right, for example, I had to go to Danny Fingeroff and say, Danny, we want to use Spider-Man, and here's how we want to use him. So Danny had to give permission for us to do it. And the same thing with a villain who might be part of the rogues gallery of another character. We would ask permission, and for the most part, unless there was a plan, no, we're going to kill so-and-so, or so-and-so is going to be involved in a 5-issue story at that exact same time. He can't be in 2 places at once, as if that.
Because Kingpin just comes to mind with Spider-Man and Daredevil specifically. So,
well, at some
are
point,
they not using Kingpin because Spider-Man's busy with them? So that makes sense.
Well, at some point, probably during, I would imagine, like Miller's run. I don't know if it was a conscious decision or not. That was before I really got involved, but Kingpin I think became much more a Daredevil villain, and he became a Spider-Man.
Rightly so.
Right. So at that point, Kingpin was owned by the Daredevil office, and people wanted to use Kingpin. Even Spider-Man had to come to us to sort of say, we want to do this with Kingpin. So when we took Kingpin down, and part of the conscious keep Kingpin out of the spotlight, have him kind of come back from the street level, there were some people who were unhappy with that because they want to use Kingpin, and they want to use Kingpin exactly the way that he always has been used. Like, we had people coming to us at one point, I think, saying, oh, we're going to use Kingpin, he's going to be on top of the world, and he's going to be running his roost from, the top of the skyscraper. It's like, well, we just spent 6-7 issues taking him down, and now he's ruined, and you can't do that. And so sometimes there was that disconnect.
Because, no, Lilith, I was just going to ask, so what was behind did you just want a big cast of villains, or was there specific motive behind which villains you picked? Like you had used Taskmaster before, and Pete London was your guy, but it's like, why Stiltman? Why some of the others?
Wild Boys.
Yeah, was it just? Did you just
Wild Boys? Did
you just want some silly characters, or was there specific?
I think it was things that felt like they could be. I mean, Wild Boys was. I cannot remember exactly, but I would put good money down on the fact that I was just lifting a couple of outrageous characters that my friend Greg Wright played with a lot. So I knew I needed ridiculous characters. I knew I needed, people who could be over the top. So they were over the top characters. And a lot of times Greg and I would trade ideas and trade characters because we were, friends and colleagues. So I would put money on that. Was an easy lift. The other ones were either, hardcore Daredevil villain, hardcore, meaning they were part of the Rogues Gallery, like Stiltman. And I know that I was looking for, characters that could be full of themselves, as I said before, somebody who would take a lot of pride in being the preacher of, Tatterdemalion, or the nobody outdoes me of Taskmaster, or the technology supreme of Stiltman, because then you could turn the dial up on that just a little bit more, and they would be, easy to play with, and yet, that they were also all, for the most part, thieves or anti-thieves, in the Tatterdemalion, aspect, where they would, Taskmaster's a profiteer, right? Stiltman is a profiteer. So it would make sense for them to go after a cash bonus as opposed to suddenly, hey, can I borrow Thanos for this? And that would have been, which would have been an interesting story, but it would have been much weirder to suddenly have this galactic or interdimensional villain playing in a profitable way.
He could have showed up in his helicopter.
Exactly. Yeah.
But no, I mean, I think it worked great. I thought the mix of actual supervillains and street-level gangster, because, I mean, that could really go off the rails, and I thought you handled it really well. It's just like, oh, yeah, I mean, this mix of guys, I could see them looking for their payday. And
Right. I just, if I was, again, $500,000 seems like nothing today, which is terrible.
It's inflation.
It's inflation, exactly, right? It's like you read it now and you're still like, $500,000, who cares?
The little note for sliding time scale in today's money, that would be
exactly. It's like when you watch films today and they put that disclaimer in front of it. This film represents, social mores and conventions that were okay at the time. You need to put a new disclaimer at the front of this one. This represents real money in 1993.
I love the cover of 18.
Oh, yeah.
318. Just chef's kiss.
Oh, it was great. Yeah. It's like, I think I have to imagine that's all Pat, because I didn't, this was I had seen the cover sketch, but I hadn't seen it all with the dialogue. So I think this is all Pat at that point. And that's a great, lot of fun he's having. Kind of gives away the ending, but it's fun. But you just sort of knew where it was going to go anyway.
Yeah, these seem like great fun issues. I can only imagine the conversations you and your artist had back and forth. He's like, "Are you okay, bro?
It's like, what do you? Once you got past the "Are you serious" thing from a creation point of view, once you put that story out on the table and you explain to Ralph and Pat and Scott, no, this is a real thing, and then everybody starts to go, wow, weird. What do you, then they're into it, and then they end up playing it out. And once you're kind of all in, then you sort of let yourself run with it.
Oh, hey, Lilith, Russell is up. Was there a specific reason you chose Tatterdemalion? I thought you said, it wasn't it because he was like the anti, forsake, profit.
Yeah. And he was, that's a good question, but yeah, Tatterdemalion was so committed to that anti material possession, aspect. He could be and was a great counter to the rest of them. I didn't need one more person who was greedy. We had a bunch of people who were clearly greedy and, I want that money and I want that profit. But have him be as intentional to go after it to stop the others from getting it, became a great sort of conflict, to where the rest of them were going. And I guess in some ways, going back to that homage, he becomes, he's a bit of a wild card. I don't think there's a character quite just like that. And it's a mad world. But he complicates it, by being there.
Yeah, because it's almost like a little break for Daredevil, with this big storyline. Because like Lilith was talking about a palate cleanser. I mean, this story is like almost more. You would have to say this group of villains drives this story more than Daredevil. Daredevil is just more almost not quite a spectator, but I mean, this is like the villain-driven story.
Yeah, and he gets to sort of like push them along and stop them from murdering each other or murdering other people or letting other people die because of their thing, like when the not the sushi chef, the hibachi chef, comes charging out, to try to get revenge on Taskmaster for ruining his restaurant. If Daredevil hadn't kicked him out of the way or whatever, the guy would have probably been killed, right? Even though just because Taskmaster's not a nice guy. But okay, so he saves that guy from his own bad decisions, or he saves even the villains from killing each other, because Daredevil doesn't necessarily want undue death even amongst these people. That's not the character. Or
if any of his villains are going to die, he's going to be the reason for it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's definitely a story where I'm sure Daredevil would be very happy for none of this to ever have happened, and never have it fallen on his his radar figuratively and from a hypersense point of view. But because it did, he had to follow it through to its miserable, greasy end.
And I love the puns. I don't know if you're responsible for the puns, for the wordplay of the covers and stuff. Like, grease is the word, and grease monkey.
Oh, yeah, the titles definitely. Yeah, I was. You're in high pun mode and you're in high fun mode when you're playing again with a story like this. If you're not trying to take advantage of the situation from a writing point of view, you shouldn't be telling this story.
So, I mean, we came at it from a reader's perspective. Was this like a palate cleanser for you too? Because you're like, okay, I know I'm gonna have to start writing some dark stuff coming up. So here, let me write something that tickles my funny bone. Maybe Scott's and.
No doubt, I think you guys have really nailed it with this palate cleanser sort of feeling. I mean, I didn't feel that we needed that so much to sort of I gotta shake all this off before we get to Fall from Grace, because a lot of things were happening concurrently. Certainly a lot of while the issues had to be written linearly. I had to write 317 and 318 before I got to writing 319 and such. There was a lot of stuff happening in terms of, here's the proposal for Fall from Grace. Here's what we're going to do with these issues. We're going to get to 325, which feels like it's a nominal type of milestone issue. So, we're mapping that out. So a lot of that was being mapped out concurrently with writing the actual issues. So it wasn't necessarily like I washed my hands of everything before I started on 319. But it's also trying to explore different things and not getting caught in a all Daredevil can be or these types of story. Sometimes you take directions and they don't work right as much. And you say, I'm going to Daredevil in this situation, and maybe it doesn't play out as well from a character or incident point of view, but you shake it up. Why did we send him to Vegas? Because we want, in another issue, because we want to play with some different senses and different situations, and also set him up for a crossover storyline. But you play different ways, and I hadn't done a comedic Daredevil story. When I jumped into to taking on the title, it was high hand action and dark Ghost Rider incidents, and hey, here's the Punisher. So we had fun with it, but they weren't fun storylines. You know what I'm saying? So this was a chance to sort of say, let's try something else.
I mean, I have so many different eras of Daredevil I love, and there's so many stories I love, but a lot of writers seem to stick in the same,
torture the poor boy till he snaps.
Some of that too.
Yeah.
Losing his mind.
But even some of them who don't, it's just everyone seems to write in the same flavor of Daredevil. I mean, this man here seemed to jump all over the place, and I enjoyed it then. I enjoy it now. I'm like, yeah. I mean, you have him in Vegas. I mean, we got to cover Dead Man's Hand one day. I mean, Little's favorite city, Las Vegas. I mean. Yeah, you have that. Like you said, you had an issue with Ghost Rider, and then we had this two-parter. It's you seem to mix it up every couple arcs, and I really appreciated it.
It's probably just for his sanity, to be honest.
Yeah, but no, that's great to hear, guys. I mean, and I appreciate that observation, and that wasn't sort of, just Dan wants to play in different genres, so he's going to use Daredevil as a way to sort of force himself into it. I hope not. But it again goes back to mainlining that idea of the city, because even when he was in Vegas, there were aspects of him as a New Yorker. You can hear my accent coming out there. That is about what you're playing with. And I always looked at Daredevil as wanting to play more city than just Hell's Kitchen. And while Hell's Kitchen was a big deal, there were so many parts of New York. I completely, again, admit that was me enriching myself so much with that newspaper because I found it such an inspiration and such a variety of things across the city to be inspired by. This is happening with this new building, or this is happening with part of town, or these are happening here. And I never knew where these things were going. I would just clip these things out, physically clip these things out, right? This is the old days. And just put them in a file. And then now and again, when I needed the inspiration, go back through, and suddenly what had been percolating in my head would become the story. And there's so many aspects just from Grace, even though that was, the whole thing about his new costume, how it was made, the pieces of it there, all were things from clip files that would then become the actual physical construction of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, like I was saying, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, there were certain stories, especially back in the 90s, like you could tell, like you kind of knew which direction people were going in, but like I would stumble across this, I was like, oh, I didn't see this coming, and this is really, really happy I didn't see this coming, or even, like you were talking about 34 hours, that story, I'm like, this is really good. I'm like, no one else is really doing this, even like a Spider-Man or somebody. Yeah, I mean, this is really original.
Why?
I like it.
Good writers give you stuff you never even thought you wanted.
Exactly.
Then once you get it, you're like, I need more. And they're like, nope, on to the next thing. Sorry.
Exactly. Thank you for putting my words into something that made sense.
No, that's really nice to hear. Thank you.
Russell's asking about Mr. Fear and stuff, but chat, Russell, we're gonna get this stuff because we're gonna be talking to Mr. Chichester every month, so I don't want to like spoil things that are to come. So
yeah, because I haven't done my Shock and Mr. Fear research yet. I got to go back in and be properly primed. Anything about Grease, Heat London, fatty foods, Rats in the Park. I'm definitely like up on right now. But if you start talking to me about the Fear storyline, I'd have to go back in. Except that one, I think there's one panel in here. There's like a name check back to that.
Yeah, we'll give you like a month to get up to speed on stuff.
Exactly. I got to dig the issues out. I got to reread them and remind myself, like, wait a minute, I did that. Who's that character? Somebody sent me one thing one time. I guess they were wasn't from Marvel, but somebody was putting together some kind. And it was a question of the Shield storyline, and it was like, I'm sorry, I just don't even remember the character like at all. I have to go back in and dig it up. But I felt bad because clearly it was important to them, but I just didn't have that at the top of my head.
But obviously there's some things that are just like seared in your brain about, certain stories, right? It's just the
absolutely,
like the in-between stories.
Some things you remember literally like they were yesterday, to coin the phrase, but some things you need to be reminded of and why. But then when you go back into it, it's like a little bit of a time capsule to sort of like understand where you were in your head, where those things kind of came from, why was this character, Pete London, I remember completely because it created him for a certain reason and he was based on a certain thing, but his henchman in this story, I don't remember as well. I don't remember why Hacker was such a germaphobe, or
because Grease is disgusting. If you've ever
well,
worked in fast food and you've seen that Grease stuff, you're like, these guys are insane.
Oh yeah,
you can have the $500,000. I'm not touching it.
And maybe that's it. Maybe I just needed somebody who was the voice of the audience, saying, "What are you doing? That's all like skeevish." But that could have been the reason.
But you said Pete London was based on something. That's what I was going to ask you. So what was the story behind Pete London?
Oh, well, that's good. That's a good question. I wanted I always wanted a criminal, a Godfather character to play, in Daredevil, figuring at certain points he's going to encounter just the criminal element, right? And I wanted somebody that could be the person we'd go back to, so it wasn't always this person, that person. And I didn't want somebody who was totally evil, somebody you could maybe deal with or play off of in certain ways. And so Pete London was actually based on my grandfather, who was a little bit reputation in some ways there, and his name was Pete London in the sense that he had come down from the city of New London in Connecticut, and so while his name was not Pete London, he was known as Pete London because that's where he came from. So I had lifted him, the name at least, and a little bit of the character.
Well, that's how you know you're going to get the legal release. Just like, hey,
exactly. Nobody's gonna play me off there. So that was a little bit of a nod to him.
That's adorable. I love when writers do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun to sort of like see the references and remind yourself, hey, that was that character. That's why I did that. That's that in joke. And sometimes you can go too far down the in joke road, and then you're just laughing to yourself. But now and again, it's a nice nod to people.
Yeah, so I mean, we'll get to more Pete London, but I think this was Pete London's last appearance because, after this, Jack Batlin supposedly doesn't know Pete London.
Right, and we never got into that aspect of it. And I'm sure I would have brought it back in and probably had an incident of Batlin dealing with him in one way with the way Batlin was planned to deal with stuff. But after a point, there's a lot of things that, didn't come back into play because they weren't my characters to play with.
Yeah. Okay, so I was never sure if it was just a big coincidence or if this was kind of like, even like Pete, you're saying goodbye to Pete London even.
Oh, like that I knew that this was the last time? Yeah, like you knew
this was the last story maybe.
Yeah. No, I didn't know. I mean, I knew he wasn't going to play into Fall from Grace.
Yeah.
There was barely room for the characters we packed in there. And then Tree of Knowledge wasn't going to really, map out very well.
Yeah.
There might have been an intention at one point or another to kind of bring him back into what was going to follow with I always think of the next story as Mark of Cain because that was the original story, but it ends up becoming Wages of Sin. But because that was getting a little bit more down into the street, but by the time I mapped that whole story out and wrote that out, I was not having as much fun as I wanted to, so I probably wouldn't want to play with it as much.
I was just thinking. I wanted to see what you still had in the tank for story-wise, because I think last time we talked, you said something about maybe even like a time travel story for Daredevil.
It's funny, you mentioned that. I mean, that was, I actually found the notes on that story the other day, because that was, what's going to be called? Because I got into all these biblical names, and it was, somebody at one point had joked, Steven Seagal wants all his movie titles back. All these 3-word, titles like he was doing in the 90s. And, but that story was going to be called, I think, Original Sin.
Mm.
And Original Sin was going to send Daredevil back in time to 18, I can't remember the exact year. I want to say 1890s New York. And 1890s New York was a completely different time. So the city was, most interesting to me initially was the senses would have been completely different. So this character who knew New York like the cliche back of his hand, I know every scent and smell and taste and such of the city, and I can ping things, from blocks away, is going to be thrown into a city that is, foul with types of pollution. The rivers would have been soaked with blood from the slaughterhouses, that were along the riverside. Everything about it would have been different. So what happens when a character who is completely dependent on his senses, his impression and the overwhelming sense of these, and spends so much time becoming disciplined about that in a way, is thrown into an environment he's got no anchor. So we were going to throw him back at that time, and then that time was also going to be about that there was a real crime boss called Boss Wheat, who was a heavy set, larger
the
than
OG Kingpin, if you will.
The OG Kingpin, exactly, and that would have been
a very New York thing. Yeah, Boss Tweed's even New York today. Yeah.
Yeah, he's definitely that, and so he would have become the main villain. Obviously, it would have been my version of him, so I would have dialed him up, and then he probably would have had a couple of hench people who would have been more super powered in some way. I don't think I was going to try to do the 1890s version of Typhoid Mary or the 1890s version of Bullseye or something, but he would have had something. We would have created some new characters, and then he would be trapped in this zone, you know, for these 4 or 5 issues of this miniseries. And I know that at some point in the time travel thing that we were thinking through, he would have lost his costume, so we would have to get another new costume to play with, and the 1890s version of it. And then, of course, I knew he was going to get back in time, but I had no concept of how we were going to get him back to modern day. I figured I would figure that out as we actually got into the story. But you know, we had an artist who was going to be Paul Ryan, who was a really great guy and a really great artist. He was signed up for it, and as I said the other day, I was looking through something, and I came across not the notes for the story itself, because I lost a lot of my original materials when I had a big awful hard drive crash many years ago. So back up, everybody. But it was the notes about 1890. You know, it was sort of like, this is what was happening in the city. These are industries that were going on in the city. This is what the neighborhoods were like. So I had all of like the little background stuff that I would sprinkle throughout as we brought the story to life.
Not to be pushy, Dan, but you know Disney Plus needs content. I'm just saying, if you got any connects, you should.
I'm saying, like if you know series,
like an animated miniseries. I'm just saying.
I
talk to your agent. I don't know. I'm just saying.
Don't just say it. If I'm in there, I'd be all over that. Maybe I'll see what I can make happen.
I mean, if you wouldn't
I would
mind,
love to play there.
I mean, if
historical fiction, do you know you have like all like the historical fiction? Oh, the nerds would eat it up.
Well, it's also like it's a perfect what if story, right? It's
exactly.
Sort of, you know, even if you didn't do, you know, even if you didn't do the whole time travel thing, if you just sort of said, well, what if Daredevil existed in the 1800s? It's sort of like the one what if story I did, which, you know, you should include here. I'm going to have fun with that one too. Would be the what if Kingpin adopted Daredevil, right? That was a fun like story to do. So, you know, within the what if world, putting a character like Daredevil in that zone, even without the time travel, would be a lot of fun.
I was going to say, I mean, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to do an episode on, that time travel story, because I always think of you, when it comes to Daredevil, as like this street-level stories, you know, even though Fall from Grace was like ninjas and mysticism, but yeah, it's just something different for, you know, when it comes to Daredevil, I'm just like, huh.
But see, the thing with that is it still felt grounded. Even though it was mysticism and ninjas, it still felt kind of grounded. So that's the nice thing. Sometimes people go off the deep end with it. They get very iron with it, which is his point. But
and this is from a woman named Lilith Hellfire. So if it sounds like grounded to you, it's like
preach.
So
feminism and love for Marvel. That's where that comes from.
I'm with it. I'm completely with it. But you know, but that's important. You know, for when, and you know, some people can completely create in this out there space. Right, and all credit to them, but you know, you have to sort of follow what makes sense to you, and then if it makes sense to you, then hopefully, you know, the audience and readers get it too. So for me, I had to have logical points to the story where the bigger things meaning, you know, the more out there stuff, you know, could connect back to. So even when you brought in a character like Ghost Rider. Right, we talked about before. Ghost Rider's over here. Ghost Rider's way out in the mystic, you know, fringes in his own world. And when you're playing in his world, if Daredevil showed up in a Ghost Rider story, right, he's the outsider, and so you can completely go into the weird zones of stuff. But Ghost Rider's visiting the Daredevil story. To me, at least, it's got to stay more grounded, because if it gets out of control, and Ghost Rider brings in all the mystic evil forces and all this other stuff, then you're like, there's no point of reference, you know, for Daredevil or the reader or the writer for that matter. At least to me.
Just looking, we've got some questions here. Oh, Russell wanted to know, is it surreal seeing characters you wrote in comics on like the either TV or the big screen? A
little bit. I mean, you know, never, especially after the Ben Affleck Affleck movie. Would you have expected? I'm starting to do that right, the spit take moment when you were
almost.
To see Daredevil played out in such a great way, and I thought the series was terrific. I mean, I loved it, and I especially loved the extended moments, those three scenes, the hallway scene, the stairwell scene, and the prison scene, where it's just like he's going to town, and that felt so wonderful, and I just saw, I don't know if it's photoshopped or whatever, but somebody sent around this shot of Charlie Cox and with the actor who plays Spider-Man.
Tom Holland.
Yeah, so it's Charlie Cox and Tom Holland in an office, and I don't know if it was photoshopped or not, but I'm hoping it
manifested into existence. He said
exactly manifested into existence exactly. So I mean it I did feel, even though it was not Scott's costume at the end of the first season, it's got a lot of elements to it. The thing that's behind you right now, and I remember feeling like we took a lot of shit for the costume at one point, and that felt like validation. He just went to somebody. He went to Stiltman, right? He went, and asked for a rebuild of his costume that is more protected because of what he's going up against, which is exactly the reason we did in Fall from Grace, and we took so much crap for that. So that felt like validation. And then, I didn't get one of those lovely little thank yous in the credits. I mean, I know that I named the Chase, right? Well, I gave the name to Styx Group. Styx Group never had a name before. So, when we started to kind of call them the Chase, to kind of have a little bit of an identity to them, it was nice to hear that name drop in the series itself when they showed up and Styx showed up. But just enjoying the character, which obviously I do. I hope that's obvious. It's fun to sort of see it now come to life, and people who probably had no idea of the character before because he's not up here.
Or if they did,
the movie. Yeah, or if they did, it's the movie, right? Yeah. It's like one thing the movie got right, or not right, but I thought was interesting. Was, he first, he was just so beaten up. I remember that it was like a shower scene or something. He's just covered in scars, and he's got tooth loose.
See, I told you that was a great. Phil and I have had this conversation. I will die on the hill. I don't think it's that bad of a movie. I felt like they got the essence. It was just the execution of it all.
Yeah. It's it's in that weird zone between, trying to get somewhere, but still being saddled with these TV movie trappings, and this kind of it's a comic book and it's a hero, so it's kind of silly, so we have to do these things. The first movie that got everything right, in my mind, and I think probably for a lot of people's, was Blade, right? That was the movie that just, I remember going to see that and getting past. It was just sometimes you get passes, because you were associated with Marvel, and we were all rolling our eyes saying, what's this going to be?
Blade? They're doing Blade?
Yeah, they're kind of and it was such a hardcore movie. There was talk about no humor in a good way, right? It was just such a completely badass hardcore movie where everybody took everything seriously and just hit every note. And it was, and that to me was then I think a lot of people would agree that became a model for.
And that's my case for passion projects, because that was definitely a passion project for a lot of people. And it shows.
Was it? I didn't know the background on that, but it definitely showed.
Yeah, Wesley Snipes really wanted to be Blade. He really wanted to. So
he
manifested it into existence.
Yeah, he manifested existence. Does he have a role in the new one? I would hope so. I would hope
I hope they give him something to do, but we haven't heard much. I'm interested in Mahershala Ali's portrayal, but Blade, Wesley Snipes is Blade to me, always will be. But it's kind of the John Wesley Shipp thing. That's always my flash, because that's what I grew up with. Sorry, Ezra. Sorry, Grant.
Or the Ron. Yeah, definitely seeing the TV show and you hope the rumors of will it come back to Disney Plus as one of these other ones, that would be awesome as well.
Definitely.
Yeah, Daredevil's that one. I hope they bring back that whole cast. I thought the whole cast was great.
Oh yeah,
You know,
it's
Matt,
so
Foggy, Carrie, and even
it's so nailed it.
yeah, Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. I mean,
Just right down the line, so phenomenal. I mean, I remember laughing with my son, you know, especially with some of the scenes of Foggy and Matt's like, man, you know, I don't actually know if I want Matt as my lawyer. You know, he's got the knowledge, but he's a little distracted. I want Foggy to be my defense, you know, not. It's like Matt's got his
holding
moments.
it up
and
single-handedly, no question.
Foggy holds it up, man. They're
Yeah.
so true.
I was gonna say that's like a very modern take, but I think even you did that in your run. It's like, you know, they used to like play Foggy as like, you know, the bumbling fool. Now it's like I said, even in your run, it's like, well, yeah, Foggy's holding down the fort. Foggy's actually doing the 9 to 5 work, you know, because Matt's out there all distracted.
Exactly. Like aspects of that, you know, I had to play out because you couldn't possibly have Matt over here and, you know, keeping the business going. And then, you know, it becomes a character has to be a complete idiot to be that close to somebody for the length of time that they've been together and not start to recognize some things. You know, I was jumping around issues here, but you know, that moment where Foggy sort of hands him his cane and says, "You forgot your cane," you know, at one point when Matt's on his way out the door, and it's sort of like, yeah, you know what he knows, and just because he's not saying it loud, and Matt's arrogance also Matt's arrogant, right? Matt's got his own foibles, but you know, his thinking, well, I've got one over on everybody. I've got one over on this guy, my best friend. It's like maybe not so much. You know, you can't play it out over all that time and not let some things slip in that way.
Well, I mean, to play up into one of the things you put into some of your issues, I mean, you really can't have a lot of self-doubts if you're the guy who's leaping backwards off of buildings every day.
No, it can't. Right? That's the whole Daredevil man without fear. But you know, but that also doesn't mean everything is as carefully planned out. Right? You're taking a dare. You're taking a leap. You're taking a you know, you're charging into things. You know, one of the things I realized after the fact, and I wish I'd played this out more in the earlier issues, in some ways, but when I got to the last issue I wrote, the last issue, which was the 380, right? You jump ahead and you get to the last thing, I think, weeks. And there's a courtroom scene in there where I was sort of describing Matt's voice. And it was, you know, I remember writing the original version of that, sort of saying, you know, Matt's smart and he's got the jury in his hands and, you know, he's defending this guy. And then I ended up rewriting it and going with this guy just sounds dangerous. You know, like to the jury in his voice, you know, he is not, right? It gives him power because a risk, he's taking a chance. He's kind of an on-edge character, even in that way, because I don't think ultimately, you know, there is that much of a facade between the two as there are between, say, Clark Kent, Superman, or even the Bruce Wayne Batman, you know, identity thing. You know, Murdoch is covered in scars and bruises and, you know, and gets away with this, oh yeah, I'm blind, I ran into a doorway, you know, sort of thing. But
or it's New York, he could have got mugged or just pushed down.
He could have got mugged, yeah, exactly. But he's also sort of like, I'm not so concerned with this because I'm daring you to call me out. You know, I'm daring you to try to get in my face about these things. So I sort of realized that like after the fact a little bit more, and might have gone back and played that out. So I think I played that some, but I could have played it out.
All right. So, Lil, do you have any final questions? But should we let this man get on with his Saturday?
Yes, let's let him get on with his Saturday because we could pick his brain all day, but we have so many more end of the month discussions that I'm looking forward
I hope so.
to.
This is me too. You guys have been great. This is a great way to start my Saturday. And I appreciate you guys letting me on. Can I plug my newsletter?
Absolutely.
Is that okay if I do that?
Well, yeah, I was going to say, yeah, please plug the newsletter because I saw you were talking about issue 380, which you were just talking about in there, which, if you don't mind, next month, can we cover Daredevil 380?
That would be awesome. And we
right.
jump right to the deep end. So for folks who are interested, I've got a newsletter which talks about comics and modern day writing and old stuff, and often touches on Daredevil. And you can check out at storymaze.substack.com. And if you choose to subscribe, which you do not have to read some issues, but if you choose to subscribe, you do get a free copy of the original plot to Daredevil 380, which is one of the few actual pieces of comic writing I have left after that awful hard drive crash. So anybody who's listening wants to check that out, that would be cool.
So yeah, so if we're going to cover that next month, yeah, everyone sign up to Dan's newsletter. You got check out the script, and you can follow along next month.
Exactly, and then you could read the script and you could ask, why didn't that actually show up in the pages? Or we can compare the plot to the actual final comic.
Oh wait, quick last minute question. Someone asked, any advice for someone wanting to break into comics?
Do Indiegogo. Sorry.
I would, like any writing, read everything. Read as much as you possibly can is the first thing. Do not just read the things you love. Look for the things that might be surprising to you if you're getting back into comic stores these days, or if you could just see what's out there. Pick some different things so you can get some different rhythms. Reading is natural to writing if that's the way you want to break in. There's different, I think, strategies of breaking in as an artist and breaking in as a writer. But I would say that is most thing. And then on this, but write just from the things that you're really passionate about. Trying to kind of bend yourself into weird shapes around. Well, I need to genre or this thing here doesn't get you any place good. I think reading is the first part. I know I do it all the time, even though I'm only working on one comic thing right now. For my own sake, I will read stuff constantly to try to understand, what's out there, how are people doing it, and it takes me in some really, really cool directions. So I'm going to start with that one. But we'll do a break into comics tip per episode.
Oh, nice.
And again, yeah, next month, Daredevil 380. So yeah, go sign up for the Dan's newsletter, and if you could get the script for 380 and follow along. And I think that would be really, if anyone has any questions about breaking into comics, that would really be the one to, because read the script and say, why did you do this, or why did you in this direction?
Please.
What's this?
Please get as deep in as that one, into that one as possible. There's a lot of backstory around that we can talk about as well. So that'd be a fun one to get into.
Okay. But yeah, yes, thank you. I mean, not only for today, but for agreeing to do this once a month. And
this is perfect. A lot of fun to even know that we're going to be doing this. It's really energizing.
So maybe, I'll talk to you later, but I guess maybe a Saturday every month, just doing this. A Saturday work probably.
Yeah, this type of time, and we'll just pick a date, and you guys tell me, and I'll lock it off. This should generally work fine.
Okay. So yeah, kids. And you can join us live every the Saturday mornings we do these. So
bring your coffee. Exactly. See.
All right, kids. So yeah. And if you have any questions, like we saw, you can ask them live, or you can email us capesandlunatics@gmail.com, or call
or text us. Apparently,
I know. Well, the voicemail is 614-382-2737. That's 614-38-capes. And yeah, again, you can also text, which I couldn't even credit the person because there was no name. It was just a phone number. I don't think you want me giving out your phone number, whoever sent that question.
Yeah, just at least throw your name in there.
And your answer was George. So yeah, fine. Just follow us on, go to Linktree, linktr.ee/capesandlunatics for links to all of our social media, links to this YouTube channel. Go subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can watch this video. Did you want to know what your favorite writer looks like? You could see him on YouTube once a month now.
I can't always promise a RoboCop shirt, but we'll see what we can find. I got to get a cool Daredevil hat. I got my Daredevil pins and ties somewhere. I have to dig those out. So.
Eventually, we'll get into some other stuff besides Daredevil too. So I think July. Should we talk your Punisher, Black Widow stores
Oh,
in July.
that would be fun. That would be fun. A lot of good things with that, and it has some of the most fun things, and also the worst moment of probably disconnecting with an artist in it. That was my one. There's a visual in there that never showed up that would have helped the story tremendously. But we'll talk about that then.
All right, yeah, we'll do that in July for some reason. I don't know. Something with
We'll tie it into isn't that when Black Widow's finally to come out?
Oh yeah,
Is it
that
So
should
it's all about the synergy. The
Yeah, exactly.
algorithm, you see.
Yeah,
Exactly.
that should be the final date because they're doing that, in theaters and on Disney Plus at the same time. So yeah, that should be the final date. Pandemics.
Fingers crossed that we're actually back to normal by then. I want to see that in the movies.
I don't care. I just want to see it. All right, kids. So yes, you got your homework. Come back next time. Dan will be back in a month. So send in your questions to Katie. Go subscribe to his newsletter. You get the script, all the behind the scenes stuff. And once again, thank you, Dan, for
Thank you. Yes, Phil, Lilith, thanks again, guys. This is terrific. We will see each other in a month, and I'm sure we'll be creating some notes behind the scenes before that.
Oh yeah.
All right. Good deal.
Send your questions, Katie.
See you later.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, take it easy. Bye.
That went great. That was fun. I love Russell got into the mix.
Such a great guest. Really great guest.
Oh yeah. So yeah,
Glad you roped him in.
once a month, kids, come back. Because remember, the devil you know,
Better than the devil you don't.
and we know him.
Hi, I'm one of the High Priests of Khonshu Ray, and I have the sacred privilege of providing you, the loony listener, with a podcast honouring Marvel's very own Moon Knight. So join me and a host of others at Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, or support the show by becoming a Patreon member. Into the Night, a Moon Knight podcast. It's time to get your Khonshu on.